Section 122 was imposed about 5 hours after the president lost his IEEPA tariff case. Section 122 says the president does have the authority to grant up to 15% tariffs on pretty much any country in the world if there is a large and serious balance of payments deficit. He has that authority for 150 days, and then Congress has to step in and either renew those tariffs or they go away. So our case held that he didn't have a balance of payments large and serious deficit, and he was not authorized in this instance to use Section 122. The court came back, they agreed with us, they granted motion for summary judgment to our plaintiffs and the state of Washington, and they also issued a permanent injunction. What that means is the tariffs stop for our clients, they still continue for everybody else, but effectively, like what happened in the IEEPA case, if we'd won a universal injunction, the government would have also applied to have immediate set aside of that injunction, an immediate stay, and the tariffs would have continued just like they did in IEEPA. So we're still kind of in the same world. They just chose to do it a little bit differently. The government did appeal on the following day after the opinion came out, and so we're waiting to hear from the Federal Circuit when our case will be heard.
Ethan and Ori, I want to go to you. Talk to us about what these tariffs have meant for your business. And this decision meant that you don't have to pay, but as we were just talking about, that doesn't mean other small businesses aren't still tangled up in this web. Ethan, why don't you kick us off, and then Ori, we can go over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Ori and I are the co-founders and co-CEOs of Burlap and Barrel. We're a single origin spice company, a direct importer of spices from all around the world. We're a very small company. We really grew up during COVID. So navigating all of this has been quite challenging. We were incredibly gratified and thrilled to see that we won the case. I mean, huge kudos to Sara and Jeffrey Schwab and the Liberty Justice Center. For a very well argued case. You know, it's kind of amazing to us that a very small company like ours can sue the government over what turns out to be an illegal policy and actually win. The tariffs have had a pretty significant impact on our business over the past year. $200,000 paid out under the IEEPA tariffs, plus additional tariffs under Section 122. So it's been a challenging situation to navigate overall, but we're thrilled to be in this position.
Ori, do you think you're going to get that money back?
Yeah, this was a really big victory for us as small entrepreneurs, as social entrepreneurs too. This was a really big win with invalidating these tariffs for us and creating a kind of narrower exemption than we would have liked. This is the beginning. That's the crack in the dam that's going to take the tariffs overall down, we believe. And this is also the beginning of us being able to get this money back. But we're going to keep pushing. This never was a case just for Burlap and Barrel. This was always about invalidating this overreach tariffs in order to support not just us, but the rest of the small businesses across America.
Ethan, walk us through your decision to file this suit to push back against these tariffs for you to get hooked up with the Liberty Justice Center. I imagine there are many hundreds, many thousands of small businesses who have been under the same pressures that you've been under. Why did you decide to take the step of fighting this in court?
Yeah, it's a great question. We are a social enterprise, a public benefit corporation. So social impact, positive social impact has always been at the heart of what we do, from working with small farms around the world to now pursuing this lawsuit. We've been following the IEEPA case over the past year quite closely. We filed an amicus brief. So we had been in touch with Liberty Justice through that period. But ultimately, the decision to file this suit was a quick one. We had a couple of days, essentially, to make a decision. I was stranded in India because of bombing in Iran. You know, it was just sort of a difficult moment to make a big decision, but we were really excited to pursue it. You know, it wasn't a hard decision, even though we had to make it quickly, because we knew that this is the right thing to do. And as you said, there are hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of importers across the country. And where are the big corporations? You know, we're a tiny little company, just to emphasize. You know, we're an e-commerce retailer. We sell through our website. We're not a big spice importer, even in our own world, let alone, you know, compared to other big importers of other products. where were all of the big corporations who had the budget, had the resources to push back against this policy? The only lawsuits that they filed were for their own refunds, purely self-interested. And as Ori mentioned, we're really doing this to support small businesses in particular across the country. We felt like somebody had to stand up, and for various reasons, we were excited to be the ones to do that.
I want to ask you about your product because, I mean, spices are the OG international trade going back millennia, right? This is what started international commerce and trade routes and kind of shaped the world we're in now. Part of this tariff is the president trying to get people to manufacture products in America. But as we know throughout history and the history of conquest and colonialization and all this, some things can only be grown in certain places. So talk us through your products, where you get them, and how this all came to be, and the complicated web of navigating all that while trying to navigate these tariffs.
Yeah, great question. When Ori and I went on Shark Tank a couple of years ago, we joked that the spice trade is the actual oldest profession in the world. No, I mean, it's not just the sort of biology or botany of where certain crops can grow, but also the longstanding traditions of growing those particular crops in different places. So sure, you can't grow cinnamon in the United States, but we work with some really specialized cinnamon producers in central Vietnam. They grow a unique species, a rare species. We're the only company to import it. We call it royal cinnamon. It has a long history associated with the royal court in central Vietnam. We work with foragers in central Afghanistan, northeastern Afghanistan, rather. I was an aid worker there before starting the company. And so we still work with communities that I worked with as an aid worker to harvest this very special variety of wild cumin. We were the first company to import it into the U.S. The heritage depends on having a customer base in the U.S. And that's what we do as a company on a daily basis. And that's really what the tariffs have kind of attacked in particular is these specific supply chains from places that grow really unique products.
Ori, let me ask you just about the weight these tariffs have had on the business. We've heard of a lot of companies having to wrestle with whether or not to pass on additional fees to their customers. Take us behind the scenes as you look at your financials, as you have looked at your financials over the last many months. What has this done to the business, the imposition of these tariffs? What did they threaten to do to the business broadly?
So when the reciprocal tariffs first came out back in last April, we looked at our business and said, what can we do? We can't bring Vietnamese cinnamon from everywhere else. We can't bring in herbs de Provence, not from Provence, which is what we do as a business philosophically. That's where you get the best spices in the world from. We looked around, and ironically, what we had realized is that the place where we can save the money that we're paying on tariffs was domestically. So we started looking at how fast do we ship things. We started saving money on cardboard and corrugate. We started looking at slowing down hiring and all these things. So the big irony of all this is that in order for us to keep prices steady, not raise prices, not push prices back onto the farmers to kind of cover these tariffs, what we ended up doing is all the savings came domestically. And with the IEEPA tariffs being refunded, also thanks to the work from the Liberty Justice Center, that money that's coming back to us, which is in the low six figures, is going right back into the American economy and right back into investing in our own business. And we want the exact same outcome from these Section 122 tariffs in the same way.
Sarah, what's next? Do you have to wait for this to get kicked up to the appeals court? Do you have any kind of timeline for this? And do you have other businesses coming to you and wanting the same results?
Yes. So on Friday, the government did file their notice of appeal to the Federal Circuit Court. So we are waiting on that court to issue a briefing schedule and set a hearing date. I'm hoping that, like with the IEEPA case, they expedite this. It's in their best interest. I think the government would want that too, so they can get this settled once and for all. And we really need to get relief for these businesses that have not only been forced to pay the IEEPA tariffs and wait for their refunds, now they're paying these illegal tariffs, and it just has to stop.
Sarah, what can you say about the government's capacity to defend the tariffs that the president has put in place here? I think there has been some speculation from the get-go that there are perhaps specious arguments from the president about the national security justifications, for instance, on the previous tariffs, on his use of these in this novel way. As you've gone through this process, how formidable were the opponents that you were up against?
They had an argument that made sense for them. I think we had a stronger argument. The court really focused on the statutory interpretation and what was going on in 1974 when Congress passed the Trade Act. Well, we were in a much different world, and The balance of payments deficit crisis can no longer exist in a floating rate exchange rate world, which is what we are in now. So the government was arguing that a trade deficit is in fact the same thing as a balance of payments deficit. We argued that it wasn't. The court agreed with us.